Star Trek confirms Species 8472 is still an extinction-level threat, although Star Trek fans believe the galaxy is at peace with Species 8472. The franchise just confirmed they are still a massive extinction-level threat. Introduced in Star Trek Voyager's third season, Species 8472 has the distinction of being the one race even the Borg fear, and for good reason. Voyager encountered Species 8472, and Janeway seemingly brokered an agreement, but as revealed in Star Trek #25, she had second thoughts. Star Trek #25 was written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly, and drawn by Liana Kangas. Trapped in fluidic space, the Theseus runs afoul of Species 8472. A few of the aliens beam aboard the Theseus, attacking the crew. They are able to fend off the invaders, and Tom Paris tries to keep their spirits high. He mentions safeguarding the crew's loved ones. As Species 8472 beams off the ship, one of them, ominous, says, "Love? We have never heard of it." Also in the issue is a briefing from Janeway, in which she second-guesses the peace with Species 8472. Since their debut in 1989, the Borg have been regarded, rightfully, as one of the Star Trek franchise's most terrifying enemies, but Species 8472 makes them look weak. Native to the mysterious realm known as fluidic space, Species 8472 cannot be assimilated by the Borg. Assimilation is how the Borg learn and adapt, but since they cannot do this to 8472, they are at an extreme disadvantage. The Borg seek out Janeway's help in turning back Species 8472. Reasoning that the Federation would be 8472's next target, Janeway enters into an agreement with her former enemy. Janeway noted all of this in the text piece, where she attempts to rationalize the peace agreement she brokered with Species 8472. After the incident with the Borg, Species 8472 realized Janeway's worst fears as they began preparations for an invasion of the galaxy. She was successful in convincing them otherwise, but the text piece reveals that, even years later, she still has her doubts about Species 8472 and whether they are trustworthy or not. Janeway concedes that if Species 8472 ever did attack the Federation, it would be easy pickings for them. Species 8472's actions in Star Trek #25 seem to confirm Janeway's suspicions. They openly attack the Theseus and her crew, apparently ignoring the armistice they signed with Janeway. However, it is worth noting that Species 8472 were in panic mode themselves, as the consequences of Lore's destruction of the Prime Universe were being felt, even in fluidic space. Fluidic space was cooking, and 8472 were lashing out at anyone that got in their way. With this in mind, Species 8472 may still mind the peace agreement, or at least under better circumstances. Yet the events of Star Trek #25 serve as a jarring reminder of how powerful Species 8472 is, and just how big a threat they pose to the galaxy. They could have very well overtaken the Theseus, and if they had not been in survival mode themselves, killed the crew. Furthermore, Species 8472 has no conception of love or empathy, which makes them terrifying opponents who cannot be reasoned with in standard ways. This makes it unusual they would even enter into a peace agreement in the first place, considering they could easily cause an extinction-level event. In the vast universe of Star Trek, few antagonists have inspired more dread and fascination than Species 8472, a race from the extradimensional realm known as fluidic space. First introduced in Star Trek Voyager, these enigmatic creatures quickly established themselves as one of the most formidable threats in the franchise's lore. They wield an unmatched level of biological superiority and possess devastatingly advanced biotechnology that far surpasses the capabilities of even the Borg. Recent developments in the Star Trek universe, as hinted in various official materials and expanded stories, have confirmed what many fans suspected for years. Species 8472 remains an extinction-level threat, and their potential for destruction has not diminished since their initial confrontation with the Alpha Quadrant powers. The origins of the threat when species 8472 was first encountered by Voyager in the Delta Quadrant, it was under the most unusual of circumstances. The Borg, notorious for assimilating entire species with ease, had stumbled upon a race they could neither assimilate nor defeat. In their desperation, the Borg began invading fluidic space, hoping to assimilate the biological superiority of species 8472. Instead, they unleashed a nightmare as 8472 retaliated with a fury that threatened not just the Borg, but potentially all life in the galaxy. Unlike the Borg or the Federation, whose technology relies on mechanical advancements, species 8472 had developed a completely organic form of technology. Their ships were living organisms, their weapons biologically engineered, and their bodies were immune to most known forms of attack. Most terrifyingly, they possessed the ability to dissolve entire planets, using a form of bioweaponry so advanced that even the Borg's adaptation protocols proved useless. The sheer potential of species 8472 to obliterate entire worlds marked them as an extinction-level threat. In their initial encounters with the Borg, they made their intentions clear. They sought to purge the galaxy of what they considered impurities. This genocidal mission was driven by a xenophobic belief in their own superiority, and their unmatched technology made it possible for them to act on these beliefs with terrifying efficiency. The stalemate and the uncertainty, Voyager's crew, led by Captain Catherine Janeway, found themselves caught in the crossfire between the Borg and species 8472. The decision to ally with the Borg to repel the 8472 invasion was one of the most controversial moves in Star Trek history, and it ultimately led to a fragile stalemate. With the help of Borg technology, Voyager was able to develop a biological weapon that could harm species 8472, forcing them to retreat to fluidic space. However, while species 8472 ceased their immediate hostilities, it was clear that the threat had only been delayed, not neutralized. Their retreat into fluidic space did not signify surrender, but rather a strategic withdrawal. For years, fans and characters within the Star Trek universe speculated on whether 8472 would return, and if so, what the consequences would be. The continued presence of 8472 recent Star Trek storylines have reignited interest in species 8472 and confirmed that they remain as dangerous as ever. In the years since their last appearance, it is suggested that 8472 has been quietly observing the happenings in the Milky Way from the safety of their extra-dimensional home. They have not forgotten the hostilities with the Borg, nor have they abandoned their disdain for what they see as lesser species. Several canon-adjacent works, including novels and game expansions, hint that species 8472 has been preparing for a possible return. They have been monitoring the political and technological developments of the Federation, the Borg, and other galactic powers. Their motivations remain largely the same. They continue to view the galaxy's inhabitants as a threat to their purity and survival, and their capacity for destruction has only grown in the intervening years. The evolution of the threat, while 8472's biological superiority was always a key element of their danger, the passage of time suggests that they may have further refined their capabilities. Unlike most species, which rely on technological advancements to enhance their abilities, 8472 evolves on a biological level. This means that even if the Federation or the Borg has developed new defenses, there's no guarantee that these would be effective against a re-emergent 8472 threat. This biological evolution could lead to new forms of bioweaponry, even more resilient starships, and enhanced physiological traits that make them even harder to combat. In a galaxy that has seen many threats rise and fall, species 8472 remains a uniquely existential danger because they are not bound by the same limitations as other powers. They do not require resources, technology, or alliances in the same way. Their biology is their greatest strength, and it constantly adapts. Conclusion: the imminent threat species 8472's return may not be immediate, but their presence looms like a shadow over the galaxy. Their re-emergence as a major antagonist would not only bring back one of the most dangerous forces in Star Trek, but would also challenge the Federation and other galactic powers in ways they have never been tested before.